Everybody, it's Mrs. Curry here. I hope that you're doing fantastic. Today we read chapters 11 and 12 of BFG. We're halfway through the book. I cannot believe it already. We've been working really hard to finish this book, but I'm so excited for the end of the book because we're going to have a viewing party. So make sure that you are up to date on the book so that you know what's going on. Today we read chapters 11 and 12. You have a couple pages to do before Friday. Friday is kind of a big day. Friday is going to be our mid BFG test. So you want to make sure that you've read all up to chapter 12 and you've done all of your assignments because you're going to want to make sure that you have those in front of you in order to help you with your test on Friday. We're going to take our test on Friday together on Zoom, and I'm going to be reading the questions to you so that you know what you need to do. Okay, so make sure that by Friday, May 8th, you are completely caught up to chapter 12 and you are ready to go. Today's chapters were Journey to Dream Country and Dream Catching. Sorry guys, the dogs are being a little crazy right now. Today's vocabulary words, you had 3. The first one was menace. Can you say menace? Great. A menace is something that threatens to cause harm. So it's a person, a place, or a thing, or something that threatens to cause harm. Okay? Our second word today, it's a weird word to say, is anguish. Anguish. It's excruciating distress or pain. So really painful or really distressful. And our last word today is dazed. It means stunned from a blow or a shock. So have you ever been shocked and you're like, whoa, and then you're like kind of in like a daze a little bit? That's what it means to be dazed. And you see this a lot in like superhero movies when someone gets like hit, like they go pow, and then they're kind of like, whoa, and they got those little ring things above their heads. That's what dazed means. So I'm going to put the board up. Make sure that you write it in your vocabulary journal because part of the test also includes vocabulary words that we're learning. These are some upper level elementary vocabulary words that you can be using because in 3rd grade we're getting away from some of those baby words. So here's your BFG vocab today. Make sure you pause it so you can write them down and then resume the video. Great job. Okay, so today we're reading chapters 11 and 12, and that's going to be on page 16 and 17 of your student packet. On page 16, it says quick write. Describe the best dream that you've ever had. Now, if you think about that, what is the best dream that you've ever had? How did you feel during that dream? Were you happy? Were you excited? Were you nervous? What made it the best dream ever? Think about that. Okay, so that's going to be your quick write today. And if you think about your the best dream, and then you think about the names of this chapter, we must be learning about dream and dream country. Okay, and so we know that Sophie saw in the cave that BFG lives in this big pole with a net at the bend. I wonder what that's used for. So we're going to be reading today, and I want you to be paying close attention. Okay. Journey to Dream Country. After the mad frobscottle party was over, Sophie settled herself up against the enormous table. You was feeling better now, asked the big friendly giant. Much better, thank you, Sophie said. Whenever I is feeling a bit scratty, the BFG said, a few gallops of frobscottle is always making me hopscotchy again. I must say it's quite an experience, Sophie said. It's a rat twizzler, the BFG said. It's a gloriumpus. He turned away and strode across the cave and picked up his dream-catching net. He's galloping off now, he said, to catch some more whipsy-whiffling dreams from my collection. Is doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come with me? Not me, thank you very much, Sophie said. Not with those other giants lurking outside. I is snuggling you very cozy in the pockets of my waistcoat, the BFG said. Then no one is seeing you. Before Sophie could protest, she had picked her up off the table and popped her onto the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. Is you wishing for a little hole to peep out of? He asked her. There's one here already, she said, and she found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it. She could see out very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled the suitcase with empty glass jars. He closed the lid, picked up the suitcase in one hand and took the pole with the other net at the end of it in the other hand and marched towards the entrance of the cave. Soon, as soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great hollow, hot yellow wasteland where the blue rocks lay and the dead trees stood, where all the other giants were skulking about. Sophie squatted low on her heels in the pocket of the leather waistcoat, had one eye glued to the little hole. She saw a group of enormous giants about 300 yards ahead. "Hold your breaths," the BFG whispered down to her. "Cross your figglers, here we go. We're just going right past all these other giants. Is you seeing that whopping great one, the one nearest us?" "I see him," Sophie whispered back. "That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest of them all. He is called Flesh Lump Eating Giant." "I don't want to hear about him," Sophie said. "He is 54 feet high," the BFG said, "and he is swallowing up human beings like they is sugar lumps, 2 or 3 at a time." "You is making me very nervous," Sophie said. "I is nervous myself," the BFG whispered. "I always get jumpsy as a jog hopper when the flesh lump eating giant is around." "Keep away from him," Sophie pleaded. "Not possible," said the BFG. "He is galloping easily 2 times as quickly as me." "Shall we turn both? Should we turn back?" "Turning back is worse," said the BFG. "If they is seeing me run away, they is giving me chase and throwing rocks." "They would never eat you, though?" Sophie asked. "Giants is never guzzling other giants. They is fighting and squalling a lot with each other, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them." The giants had already spotted BFG, and all heads were turning, watching him as he jogged forward. He was aiming to pass well into the right of the group. Through her little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh lump eating giant moving over to intercept them. He didn't hurry, he just lopped over casually to a point where the BFG would have to pass. The others lopped after him. Sophie counted 9 of them all together. She recognized the blood butler in the middle of them. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall. There was an air of menace about them as they lopped slowly across the plain with long, loping sides, heading for the BFG. "Here comes the runty one," boomed the flesh lump eater. "Ho, ho, ho, there, runty one. Where's you splash winkling away into such a hefty hurry?" He shot out the enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by his hair. The BFG did not struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still. "Be so kind as to be letting go of my hair, flesh lump eater." The flesh lump eater released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood around, waiting for the fun to start. "Now then, you little crab squiffer," boomed the flesh lump eater. "We is all wanting to know where you is galloping off to every day in the daytime. Nobody ought to be galloping off anywhere until it's dark. The human beings could easily be spotting you and starting a giant hunt. And we is not wanting to do that, is we?" "We is not," shouted the other giants. "Go back to your cave, runty one." "I is not galloping to any human being country," the BFG said. "I is going other places." "I is thinking," the flesh lump eater is, "that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets." "Right you is," cried the blood bottler. Just now I is hearing him chittering away to one of them in his cave." "You is welcome to go and search my cave from back to front," the BFG answered. "You can go into every crook and nanny. There is no human beans, no stringy beans, no runner beans, no jelly beans, or any other types of beans at all." Sophie crouched still as a mouse inside the BFG's pocket. She hardly dared to breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole, she watched the giants clustering around the poor BFG. How revolting they were! All of them had piggy little ears and enormous mouths with thick sausage lips. When the flesh lump eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was jet black, like a slab of black steak. Every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly, the flesh lump eater shot out 2 enormous hands and grabbed the BFG around his waist. He tossed him as high in the air as he shouted, "Catch him, man-hugger!" The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out quickly in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbor, preparing for the game they were now going to play. Now the man-hugger threw the BFG high and far, shouting, "Catch him, Bone Cruncher!" And Bone Cruncher ran forward and caught the trembling BFG, immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, child chewer!" he shouted. So it went. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who could throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails into the sides of the pockets, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out when she was upside down. She felt as though she were a barrel going over Niagara Falls. And all the time, there was a fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG and he would go crashing to the ground. Catch him, Meat Dripper! Catch him, Guzzard Gulper! Catch him, Maid Masher! Catch him, Blood Bottler! Catch him! Catch him! Catch him! In the end, they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks and shouted, "Run, you little runt! Let us be seeing how fast he was galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Ruddy little runt!" they shouted. "Troggy little twit! Shivery little shrimp! Mucky little midge!" And there he is being thrown around like a BFG. At last the BFG got clear of them all, and in another couple of minutes the pack of giants was out of sight all over the horizon. Sophie popped up her head from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Phew," said the BFG. "Few and far between. They was in a nasty crouching mood today, was they not? I is so sorry you was having the whirligig time." "No worse than you. Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do you actually catch the humans that you eat?" "They is usually just sticking an arm through the bedroom window and snitching them from their beds." "Like you did to me?" "Ah, but I isn't eating you," said the BFG. "How else do they catch 'em?" "Sometimes," the BFG said, "they is swimming in from the sea like fishies, with only their heads showing above the water. And then out comes a big hairy hand and grabbles someone off the beach." "Children as well?" "Often childers," the BFG said. "Little childers who is building sand castles on the beach. That is who the swimmerling ones are after. Little chidlers is not so tough to be eating the grandmammas." So says the child-chewing giant. As they talked, the BFG was galloping fast over the land. Sophie was standing right up in her waistcoat pocket now and holding on to the edge with both hands. "How else do they catch people?" she asked. "All of them is having their own special ways of catching the human being. The meat-dripping giant is preferred to pretend that he is a big tree growing in the park. He is standing in the park in the dusky evening and he is holding great big branches over his head. And there he is waiting until some happy family is coming to have a picnic under the spreading tree. The meat dripper giant is watching them as they lay out their little picnic. But in the end, the meat dripper who is having the picnic, it is the meat dripper who is having the picnic. "Ew, that's so awful," said the Sophie cried. The gizzard gulping giant is a city lover. He is lying high up in between the roofs of houses in the big cities. He's lying there snugly as a sniggler and waiting and watching the human beings walking on the street below. And when he sees one that looks like a whoopsie good flavor, he grabs it. He's simply reaching down and snitching it off the street like a monkey taking a nut. He says it is nice to be able to pick and choose what you is having for your supper. Don't people see him doing it? Never is they seeing. Don't forget the dusky dark at this time. Also, Gizzard Gulper has a very fast arm. His arm is going up and down quicker than Squinker's. But if all those people are disappearing every night, surely someone's got to notice. There's got to be some sort of outcry," Sophie said. "The world is a whopping big place," the BFG said. "It has 100 different countries. The giants is clever. They's careful not to be skittling off to the same country too often. They's often switch fiddling around." Even so, Sophie said. "Don't forget," the BFG said, "that human beings is disappearing everywhere, all the time, even without the giants guzzling them up. Human beings is killing each other much quicker than the giants is doing it." "But they don't eat each other," Sophie said. "Giants isn't eating each other either, nor is giants killing each other. Giants is not very lovely, but they is not killing each other. Nor is crocodilly-dallies killing crocodilly-dallies, nor is pussycats killing pussycats." "But they kill mice," Sophie said. "Ah, but they're not killing their own kind. Human beings is the only animals that is killing their own kind." "Don't poisonous snakes kill each other?" Sophie asked. "Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other," the BFG said, "nor is the most fearsome creature like tigers and rhinoceros. None of them is ever killing their own kind." Have you ever thought about that? Sophie kept silent. I is not understanding human beings at all, said the BFG. You is a human being, and you is saying a grizzly and horror gust for giants to be eating human beings? Right or left? Right, Sophie said. But human beings is squishing each other all the time, the BFG said. There is shooting guns and going up in aeroplanes to drop bombs on each other's heads every week. Human beings is always killing other human beings. He was right. Of course he was right, and Sophie knew it. He was beginning to wonder whether humans were actually any better than giants. Even so, she said, defending her own race, I think it's rotten that those foul giants should go off every night to eat humans. Humans that have never done any harm. That is what the piggy wig is saying every day, the BFG answered. He is saying, I has never done any harm to the human being, so why should he be eating me? Oh, dear, Sophie said. The human beings is making rules to suit themselves, but the rules they is making do not suit the piggy wiggies. Am I right or am I left? Right, Sophie said. Giants is also making rules. Their rules is not suiting the human beings. Everyone is making his own rules to suit himself. But you don't like those beastly giants eating humans every night, do you? I do not, the BFG answered. One right does not make many lefts. You is quite cozy down there in my pocket. I am fine, Sophie said. Then suddenly, once again, the BFG went into the magical top gear of his. He began hurtling forward in the phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscape became blurred, and again Sophie had to duck down out of the whistling gale to save her head from being blown off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming past. It came knifing through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed her like a hurricane. But this time the BFG didn't stay in top gear long. It seemed he had some barrier to cross, a vast mountain perhaps, or an ocean, or a great desert. But having crossed it, he once again slowed to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look out once more for the view. She noticed immediately that they were now in altogether a paler country. The sun had disappeared above a film of vapor. The air was becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no color in it at all. Every minute the mist became thicker, the air became colder, and everything became paler and paler, until soon there was nothing but gray and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mists and ghostly vapors. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green. It was ashy gray. There was no sign of living creature and no sounds at all except for the thud of BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. We is here at last, he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around at her whistling mist and ghostly vapors. Where are we? She said. We are in dream country, the BFG said. This is where all dreams is beginning. Okay, so I'm going to stop before we read the next chapter. One of the activities on page 17 in your packet looks like this. It kind of looks like a little web. In this web, you're going to use different words that the author used to describe dream country. So if you think about what I just read, is dream country this beautiful tropical paradise? No, it's all gray and it has thick mists and it's ashy gray. There was no living creatures. So you're going to want to write that. It's foggy. You're going to want to write those words in each of those bubbles. Okay? Next chapter, dream catching. The big friendly giant put the suitcase on the ground. He bent down low so that the enormous face was close to Sophie's. From now on, we is keeping as still as a winky little mice, he whispered. Sophie nodded. The misty vapor swirled around her, and it made her cheeks damp and left dewdrops in her hair. The BFG opened the suitcase and took out several empty glass jars. He set them ready on the ground, with their screw tops removed. Then he stood up very straight. His head was now high up in the swirling mist, and it kept disappearing, then appearing again. He was holding the long net in his right hand. Sophie, staring upwards, saw through the mist that his colossal ears were beginning to swivel in and out from his head. They began waving gently to and fro. Suddenly, the BFG pounced. He leaped high in the air and swung the net through the mist with a great swishing sweep of his arm. got him, he cried. A jar, quick, quick, quick. Sophie picked up a jar and held it up. He grabbed a hold of it. He lowered the net. Very carefully, he tipped something absolutely invisible from the net into the jar. He dropped the net and swiftly clapped one hand over the jar. The top! Bring it to me! The jar, quick, the jar top! Sophie picked up the screw top and handed it to him. He screwed it on tight, and the jar was closed. The BFG was very excited. He held the jar close to one ear and listened intently. It's a wink squiffler, he said, with a thrill. It's even better. It's a fizz wizard, a golden fizz wizard. Sophie just stared at him. Oh my, he said. This will be giving some little toddler a very happy night when I is blowing it in. Is it a really good one? Sophie said. A good one, he cried. It's a golden fizz wizard. It is not often I get one of these. He handed the jar to Sophie and said, Be still as a starfish now. I is thinking there may be a whole swarm of fizz wizards up here today. And do kindly stop breathing. He was terribly noisy down there. I haven't moved a muscle, Sophie said. Then don't, the BFG answered sharply. Once again, he stood up as tall as he could in the mist, holding the net ready to go. Then came a long silence, the waiting, the listening, and at last, with surprising suddenness, came the leap and the swish of the net. Another jar, he sighed. Quick, quick, quick! When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear. Oh no, he cried. Oh, mince my maggots! Oh, swipe my swoggles! What's the matter? Sophie asked. It's a troggle humper, he said. His voice was filled with fury and anguish. Oh, save our souls, he cried. Deliver us from weasels. The devil is dancing on my dibbler. Here he is with his big long net, catching dreams. Think about it. So the first time he caught a fizz wizard, and now, how is he feeling? Is he as excited as he was when he was catching the fizz wizard? No. What do you think he caught? Maybe he caught that. Let's see. What are you talking about? Sophie said. The BFG was getting more distressed in the minute. Oh, bash my eye bones. I come all this way to get a lovely golden dream, and what is I catching? What are you catching? Sophie said. I is catching a frightsome troggle humper, he cried. This is a bad, bad dream. It is worse than a bad dream. It is a nightmare. Were you right? Oh dear, Sophie said. What will you do with that? I is never letting that go, the BFG cried. If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having one of the most blooding time. It is one real kicksy bog thumper. I is exploding it as soon as we get home. Nightmares are horrible, Sophie said. I once had one, and I woke up sweating all over. With this one, you would be waking up screaming all over, the BFG said. This one would make your teeth stand on end. If this one got into you, your blood would be freezing into icicles, and your skin would be creeping across the floor. Is it as bad as that? It's worse, cried the BFG. It's a real wopsy grob switcher. You said it was a troggle humper, Sophie told him. It is a troggle humper, he cried, but it's also a bog thumper and a grob switcher. It is all three things riddled into one. Oh, I is so glad I was clutching it tight. Ah, you wicked beastie, you, he cried. Never more is you going to be bunk-doodling the poor little human beanie toddlers again. Sophie, who was staring into the glass jar, cried out, I can see it. There's something in there. Of course there's something in there, BFG said. You're looking at a frightsome troggle humper. But you told me dreams were invisible. They is always invisible until they is captured. After that, they is losing a little of their invincibility. We is seeing this one very clearly. Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint little scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture of a blob of gas and a bubble of jelly. It was moving violently, thrashing against the sides of the jar and forever changing shape. It's wiggling all over the place, Sophie cried. It's fighting to get out. It'll bash itself into bits. The nastier the dream, the angrier it's getting when it's in prison, the BFG said. It's the same with wild animals. If an animal is very fierce and you is putting it into a cage, it will make a tremendous rumpeldumpus. If you have a nice animal, like a cockatoodle too, or a froggle-frump, it will sit quietly. Dreams is exactly the same. This one is a nasty, fierce, begrotting nightmare. Just look at him splashing himself against the glass. It's quite frightening, Sophie cried. I would be hating to get this one inside me on a darksome night, the BFG said. So would I, Sophie said. The BFG started putting the bottles back into the suitcase. Is that all? Are we going? I is so upset by this travel humping, bog thumping, grab switcher, the BFG said that I is not wishing to go on. Dream catching is officially finished for today. So, soon Sophie was back into the waistcoat pocket, and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could. When at last they emerged out of the mist and came onto the hot yellow wasteland, all the other giants were sprawled out on the ground, fast asleep. And that is the end of chapter 12. So your assignment for today is to work on pages 16 and 17 in your packet that talk about chapters 11 and 12. Tomorrow, what you should be working on is you should be working on page 18 and 19. Now, this is a review of figurative language. We talked about a few classes ago, simile, imagery, and personification. These are some things that the author uses to make their story come to life and to be so much better and to be able to put that mind movie in your head. So as a review, you're going to work on pages 18 and 19. You're going to read the quote from the story. You're going to circle the type of personification or imagery or simile. So you're going to circle the type of figurative language. And then you're going to write, I know this because. So I know this is a simile because it compares two things using like or as. Or I know this is imagery because it's using such great language that uses all five senses. Or I know this is personification because it's comparing this object or thing to an animal or a person, right? It's giving them animal or human-like characteristics. So you're going to put that in that last column, and that's on pages 18 and 19. When you're finished with these 4 pages, so 16, 17, 18, and 19, please be sure to upload them to Seesaw. I hope that you're doing fantastic, and make sure that you're completely caught up by Friday, May 8th, so you can take your mid-quiz. Thanks. See you guys later.